Sandman me a dream. Make him the cutest that I've ever seen. Give him two lips like roses and clover, and tell him that his lonesome nights are over. Sandman, I'm so alone, don't have nobody to call my own. Please turn on your magic beam, Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream.
Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente. Tonight's guest is Robert A. Powell. Robert has been into occultism for over a decade. Through years of experiences of self-mastery, he learned the art of tarot, leading directly to his first professional cartomancy job with Orannum. While at Orannum, he was anointed their Psychic of the Month in July of 2013. Born, raised, and corn-fed in Terre Haute, Indiana, he is at one with the Midwest. Not being a stranger to the paranormal, Robert has always felt strongly influenced by Indiana's copious history of activity. He is the author of 2 books and is a teacher of the occult sciences and magic. Robert also maintains several YouTube channels that each focus on one of his passions. Welcome, Robert. Welcome to Nox Mente.
Yeah, I'm
hello,
very glad.
Robert. I talked during your hello too.
Oh, hey, it's no problem.
It made me chuckle the corn-fed bit.
I had to add something funny in there. It was just too lame without it, you know.
Hey, I'm from Indiana. You have to throw in corn.
That's right.
It's
But
so great.
there's more than corn in Indiana.
Yeah, we have wheat.
There's that Santa's playground.
Santa Claus, Indiana.
Yes, that too.
Corn husking, baby.
That's Oklahoma.
It beats Nebraska corn-fed people.
Oh my God. Listen, I'm Iowa. That's our state anthem is, that's where the tall corn grows.
Yeah, but it's still not as good as our corn.
I don't know. Iowa's pretty wholesome up there. You've got all that.
Well, you can tell by the girls how thick they are. That's how you know they're corn.
Oh, that's how you tell.
Sometimes there's corn where there shouldn't be.
Thick and juicy. Thick and juicy. Gotta love that.
All the time.
What's it? Well, Queen said it
I'm gonna
right
be
too.
nice.
Fat bottom girls make the rockin' world go round.
Oh, Freddie Mercury. He was
Yes.
always honest.
Oh man. All right. Well, let's get up into this. All up into this with our Cornhuskers oil. So,
Hey, that's E85, baby.
I know.
That just brought up a very wrong image.
I know. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm laughing. I can thank all of our little hive group for bringing me into this great
Oh,
mood,
yeah,
and then
right.
having Robert on. So anyway, Robert. So I'm a huge fan of your work, as you know. I've told you, and all that you've contributed through your podcasts and the books. So it's a great honor to have you on here. And will you give us, we just got your bio, but give us an idea of the world you grew up in, symbolically, so the early world. What shows influenced you in that kind of stuff, the stuff that kind of makes you tick now?
Yeah, well, okay, I'm here. I told Jerry that my internet might be in and out. My Wi-Fi sucks. So, just making sure. But first and foremost, I'm the son of Zeus. And I conquered a whole lot of dragons
Oh my.
along the way. But yeah, that's my mythological figure. That's my soul. I'm just kidding. But, you know.
Actually, you don't know how that kind of fits into a side back channel thing that Suzanne and Jerry and I talk about.
That we
with
can
the
discuss
gods.
afterwards.
Yes, we can discuss that in post Horus. Anyway, sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
but in actual reality, I was, like Jerry said, born and raised in Terre Haute, Indiana, and I always found the history fascinating. I guess you could say it's a town of 60, 70,000 people, more or less a small city, but it was very different. And when I was growing up, I was a little bit you can say I have Asperger's to a mild degree. So school was very hard for me. Um, I had to take 9 years of speech therapy as a kid, and I always expressed myself better through writing and through art. So I had to work harder to read and write, more than most people. So after about 9 years of speech therapy, and I didn't come from such a great uh, household either. My stepfather, he was abusive, he was a drunk, and I'm not surprised coming from a podunk town like this. But you know, I came from a very harsh background, and it's normally a part I don't speak about, but you guys are getting the pleasure of it. I'm not going to go too deep, but I was almost forced to become an academic. I was forced to learn math. I was forced to do things right in school until high school. Then I just said, "Hell with you guys," to my family and all of that. And that's when my teenage years kicked in. So I barely graduated. Actually, funny story about my graduation. Um, in my graduation, I don't know how I did it, but I talked my principal into letting me take a home a full trimester's worth of homework. Don't know how I pulled that off, but this was after I got voted in as class president. Then right after that, I took about it was about 12 weeks per trimester. So I got real lazy. I was working. I spent all my money on like what's I spent all my money on stupid stuff, partying, stuff like that. And then I get a call from my principal saying, "Hey, you have 5 days to turn in your homework, or you're not going to graduate." I'm like, Jesus Christ!
Wow.
So yeah, I pretty much just went and you could say I got like 7 monsters at the time. Monsters were a brand new product right around this time period, 2005, 2006. So I just got a bunch of energy drinks, and I stayed up for about 16 hours, and I completed about 12 hours of homework. I turned all that in, and I there were 5 classes. I turned in each class of homework, and the teachers, they were in shock. I don't think anybody thought I was going to graduate. But after I turned in my homework, I just walked out. I looked at my principal and I said, "I'm going to bed." You have a but lo and behold, I I got a phone call, and I got really high grades on all my work. So I don't know how I did it. I mean, it was a miracle. Then I pretty much joined the army. So when I was in the army, I spent the majority of my time in Texas, and then I picked up on other people's accents, and started doing work as a military policeman at Fort Hood and all of that. Then you could say uh, I was a little bit all over the place, but I came back home after the army. Had a terrible relationship, and right after that, I guess you can say that kicked off where I got really deep into the occult. I was into it earlier, but after the breakup and all that, dealing with those demons, I guess you could say the occult filled up a lot of time and gave me a lot of answers. That's the short version.
What kind of religious stuff went on when you were young?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, my family's Pentecostal, and I didn't have a love for Pentecostal until I went with my aunt to church, and I saw the people rolling around on the ground. I thought, "Oh wow, this is interesting, but in a strange way, I like it." Maybe it's that sort of exotic side of me. It's like something brand new. I didn't roll around myself, but it was interesting. Then she introduced me to Roman Catholicism after she converted, and Roman Catholicism has a horseshoe effect in comparison to the Pentecostal.
How
And
old were you when you went from the Pentecostal experience to the Catholic experience?
probably when I was like 12.
Okay. But up until 12, you had been Pentecostal?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much, because my whole family's Pentecostal,
Okay.
all but my aunt. So I felt the same spirit in the Catholic Church, but it was the method was used differently in a different mood in a different way to reach the same spirit for a different result. And I think
Yes.
this may have been my first experience with magic.
Yes. Well, it is. They do have, proper rituals and rites.
Right. And church is mainly everyone's first, well, baptism. That's your first brush with magic
Mm-hmm.
ever, I think.
Truly.
Unless you're
For people brought up for people brought up with
in the
that.
West. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're
Yeah,
born
actually,
by a shaman. Yeah.
actually, I considered becoming a Catholic priest at one point at a young age, but I never followed through. But later on in my years, I was still a virgin at the time, but I still wanted to, even when I was an occultist, I wanted to be a Catholic priest just to get inside of their heads and collect all that knowledge, even though I wasn't Catholic later on.
So when you wanted to, being familiar with your work and all that, and then hearing this stuff, it seems like you were always attracted to a certain. It seems like you were just in generally attracted to a certain amount of structure with spirituality that has a transcendent effect. Like the whole point of rituals is to move through a certain field or dimension. And so I'm hearing that with this, you had maybe wanted to be a priest, and then also your observance of the more mystical stuff with the Pentecostal church, with the rolling around on the floors and all that stuff, which I consider quite witchy, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment. It's always been this feeling of something that's there. You can't see it, but you know it's there. And uh, it's sort of what led me in my childhood to sort of explore science a bit. Like I won three when I was in elementary school. I could explain to you all about how a light bulb works, how the electric runs, and how the light switch works on it, the transistors and stuff like this. And because it's always been that mystical, invisible experience, and I've always wanted to find some sort of way to sort of explain this invisible thing, but there has to be a method to it, and that method just so happened to be magic.
But and I think what I'm getting at too is that you really apply a lot of structure to it. So it's not like you're just going to at any moment break out a candle and then call in something. Like it sounds to me like you honor times and the past history, and observing planetary stuff as well as old wisdom with talismans and just all that stuff that goes along with it.
Ancestral ties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds like you had that before you got into magic, is what I'm saying. Is this sounds like a key component to your personality.
Yeah. Structure was a very big thing, and my structure is just simply method, and like one method is this train coming by. Every time I'm in the middle of something, it always comes by.
Oh, nice. Well, mine came by earlier, but this is important when we get into the dream part.
Yeah, we're going to get into it. I just want to clarify that method is sort of my structure. Like when I saw, how a Pentecostal ritual was set up, it made sense to me. And when I broke that down, or when I saw how a Catholic ritual was broken down, it fascinated me. And to me, you're right. Like when I go by the planetary days and the planetary hours, I see this old magic as a technology.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't something that somebody just picked up and said, "Hey, let's make this day Venus. Let's make this hour Venus," or let's go with the Greek magical papyri. Let's
Hmm.
make this hour the hour of Thoth. Like this shit just wasn't made up. Someone actually had to sit there and observe the skies, and they had to work with their system of magic. Say, well, this didn't work, but this did, or this circle casting didn't work, but this one did. For example, the Ouroboros, with the circle. When Osiris was going in the underworld, he had an Ouroboros above his head and an Ouroboros below him to protect him from spirits. And we found this in King Tutankhamun's tomb. So, I think that this is a magic and it's a method. Does that make sense? And a method
Absolutely.
structure. So,
Who was whoever our guest was last week? I can't remember right now, but
Billy Brujo.
right, he brought this up about the Chinese.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
oh, I love it.
So yeah, Billy was off. That was awesome. So have you, with this also, this seems interesting. This is interesting for me asking this question, and understanding your predominance or predisposition towards structure. Have you done any psychedelics that may have altered? Have you done psychedelics or anything that altered your consciousness, that
Yeah.
shifted you out of this state?
Yeah. I can attest to one time I did acid in California. And me and my friends, we was driving. He was somewhat in a ghetto. And we just found this big door. And like the whole middle part was glass. The glass was huge. Just, something we're like, we could use that for magic. We loaded it up in his truck. We went to his house. And then I said, I have an idea. He drove me to Walmart, and I got some black paint, and I painted the back of the door glass black, and I had myself a giant scrying mirror.
That's excellent. And what happened? Did you have any experience with this?
Oh yeah, that's what I'm getting ready to get into.
Okay.
I dropped some acid, and when I was scrying, there was 2 candles beside the door. I was looking into the glass, and I saw my face melting off. Like I was turning into a zombie. And it was horrifying.
So you basically made a full-length psychomantium.
Yeah, pretty much.
Awesome.
I was looking,
Awesome.
and I saw myself melting, just scrying into this door that I painted on. But it got to the point to where I said, "Hell with this!" And I grabbed that door. I was so freaked out, and I slammed it on the ground, and the glass busted.
Oh wow.
I ran outside in the backyard, and I was running. I was freaked out. I thought a cougar was coming at me.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I hopped the fence. Not my problem.
I mean that there's a rule for in magical initiation where one gets stalked by the wild beast. And so it's interesting that kind of, even though I know that's a reality out here in the West, I'm out in the West where cougars are, and not just older women. And so it is a reality, but also in the unconscious, the subconscious mind, the underbits, there's something to that. So you were messing in the black mirror, and then that led to you having this fear trip, essentially, of being possibly stalked or hunted by a wild beast.
Yeah, I just wanted to push my limits.
Yeah. So, well, that's actually that's one of the better stories I've heard with the psychedelics. But you went into it intentionally, trying to activate some sort of psychic ability or have some sort of experience that wasn't really. They seem more focused. Let me put it that way.
Rely on magic. When I see magic, I don't rely on belief. People are like, "How do you do that? How do you not rely on belief in magic?" I said, magic is a method. It's a hypothesis. It's a method, and if I get results by not believing that if I do invest something into it, I will get something out of it. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's where I test a lot of this grimoire technology, where I test a lot of this. So when I was working with that black mirror, I understood the operation. But like a mad scientist, I thought, what can I do with this mirror? Can I get what the classic writers got out of this?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's about it.
What sign are you?
I'm a Libra, but my moon sign is a Capricorn, and I have a Virgo ascendant. Then I have Pluto, Mercury, and Venus in Scorpio.
In what house?
I'd have to look. I don't know, honestly.
I can't remember. I know I've looked. You do have an interesting chart. Okay, excellent. So let's get into the dream. Let's get into the middle of this. Get into some meat. So give us an idea of your general. It doesn't have. We'll get into the standout stuff in a minute. But how do you generally dream? What's the landscape like? What's the experience in general like?
It really varies. Sometimes it's black and white. Sometimes it's in full color.
I want to hear about the black and white stuff when you get done with this. We don't get a lot of that.
Yeah. Those are very different. Probably my more vivid dreams, but I'll go into that when you're ready. But I dream in all sorts of various ways. I've been doing dream work for a while. I keep a dream journal, and I've gotten to the point to where I can control my dreams. It's kind of a weird thing. So if once I realize I'm dreaming, I know what's going on, and I'm thinking to myself, it's kind of sad. Even when you're in your dreams, you're somewhat rational. It's like, pigs don't fly. Oh, I'm in a dream.
Yes, that's a cue, right? You're like, this is normal, and in the waking life, this is out of place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much. But my caller dreams, like, they're so realistic. Sometimes they're about school, sometimes they're about people I know, or sometimes even old friends I haven't seen in years. Uh, they're about a plethora of topics and events that I've gone through. So some of it is just this receptacle that I throw stuff into for memories, but other times I think it's very real.
So, do you experience any of the? I mean, you sound like a prolific dreamer, and you have a lot to bring to the table. And I just want to parse out just all the basic stuff. So, sounds and touch, and also glyphs and writing. Any of that?
Now, I can say normally all of my five senses are in touch, but my dreams are much more direct. I don't really dream like in this abstract world, but
Mhm.
it's as real as this is, and it's much more direct. So there's not anything, I can't say overly mystical, but maybe my brain just takes things more directly.
Right.
Which,
Well, we established that structure side, your left
Mhm.
brain, which
Yeah,
would definitely be in line with this.
and
So
it's
what about reading? Are you able to read text at all in dreams? Does that happen?
yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, probably because I read so many books. But I have this theory. Yeah, I do read text, but my theory is that when we dream, like when I'm reading a book in there, and that's how I came up with two of my books actually, is I saw them in a dream. I saw the book titles, and I saw what they were going to be about. Then I would wake up and say, I gotta write these books. And
That's amazing. That's like a download.
mhm,
Would you consider that a download?
I would say so. I mean, because I see that when I see a book specifically titled. There was one book, my Bibliotheta Ita. Uh, I saw on my altar. I saw this book that said XVIII, and it had a 10-pointed star on it. And that's when I said, "Oh wow, there's got to be something to this. I don't know what it's going to be about." But I wrote that down, and I kind of threw it in my notes, forgot about it. Then about a year later, that's when I channeled my book, and I said, that's what this is. You know.
that's that's actually, I think I saw an interview with Rimsey and you over
Mhm.
that book. Is that the one? Did you do an interview with him?
Yes, yes. That
I
was
think
the one.
that's how I found you.
Oh, I love Reamsey. He's a great guy.
Yeah, but it's this book, so it's interesting.
Mhm.
I didn't know that. I guess maybe I didn't register that if you had told him that's how it came through. That, I mean, this is amazing. The download stuff really is fascinating me. How this is part of what one of the things I'm trying to understand or look for is how we can get communication in that realm and bring it here, or vice versa, how we can communicate between these experiences. So I want to hear about the black and white. Give us some,
Okay.
fill in some black, give us a dream maybe of black and white.
Oh, those are my most horrific dreams and my strangest dreams. I'll
Okay,
go
so first off, that's where they file under, really, right? So they're strange and horrific.
sometimes. I mean, this is going to go deep, and I'm probably going to scare away a lot of the white lighters with this dream.
That's all right. We've got our core group here, and none of them are.
Oh, I'm teasing. But
They're all
triggered. Triggered.
they're-
But my actual black and white dreams, there was one to where I was just kind of cruising into cornfield land, and I saw this big barn. Like, oh wow, this is great. I'm talking about a huge barn. You know those kind you see in movies?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was huge. It was a big red barn. I went in there, and then everything looked normal. But then in front of me, there was this stairway going down, and then it went from looking like a farm. Their stairway was totally separate. It was very, very cold. Like it was made of steel, like almost like something you'd see in a sci-fi movie, right? Said this is weird. I mean, the two worlds don't match. So I went, I opened up the door, and then as I was sort of walking through, I saw it was like a freezer. I saw meat hanging down everywhere.
Oh.
Yeah, and then in the last room, I actually saw this guy. He looked like the guy from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and he was putting my mom on a hook upside down. It was disgusting. Then I looked around and I saw my entire family and friends on these hooks, and they had these bags around them. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Then he looked at me and he saw me. I'm like, hell with you. But I tried to run back, and then that big steel door shut leading to the stairway. So I ran past him, and there was another door in the last room. I went through it, and I met my future self, actually. After I stepped through the door, the guy stopped. And then I met myself, and I was talking to myself. And I forget the conversation, but I know it helped me out. And he told me something. I told myself something. And then I went through that doorway, and I ran past all my dead family members, and I was going through each room, and I pried open that big steel door leading to the barn, and I ran up there, and then I looked back after I made it to the top of the stairway. The guy looked at me, and I was looking back, and he wouldn't go past that steel area. And I said, hell with this. I ran out of that barn, and I got myself some gasoline and some match, and I set that son of a bitch on fire. I burned it down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of my more vivid dreams.
How old were you when this dream happened?
Oh, God, I was probably like 22, 23.
Okay. And could you, so when you got back from the dream, did any of that tie into, so you can knock out the surface level stuff, did any of that tie into anxieties and stuff going on in your life at the time?
I really didn't have any angst against my family.
Hmm.
I was pretty much well beyond all the childish stuff at this period. So as I was thinking about it and going through it, I couldn't equate it to an emotion. I wasn't feeling that emotion. I couldn't equate it to memories. I love my family.
Hmm.
I mean, I may have not have had the best past, but I still love my family.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But it felt like an initiation. I felt like something was put behind me, but I don't know what. It was sort of that breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's classic. You went to the underworld and then you saw some of the classic underworld imagery, which is bodies. I mean, it through your filter at the time, at least, too. So, meat essentially hanging on meat hooks and all of that. Um, it could have been, almost an Anna's descent in
Yeah,
a way.
very
So
much.
the initiation aspect does seem to fit. That's a fantastic dream. What really fascinates me though is that it was in black and white. I don't get enough of the black and white dreams. And so and so this new angle that possibly you're the second person I've heard talk about black and white dreams and they were angsty. So I'm starting to see maybe a possible thread.
Maybe it's
Do you
just
have
dream noir.
dream noir exactly? Do you still get the black and white
Yeah,
imagery?
yeah. I think those are my most profound dreams, actually, more than the ones with collar. Now that I think about it, um,
Interesting.
sometimes they may seem meaningless, but I always pull something out of it. Like some of them are just goofy as hell. Like there was this one dream I had to where I was sitting in the car with my family. I was probably, you know, I would say 13 years old. And they said, okay, we're going to this theme park. I'm like, sweet. So we're sitting in the car going to this theme park. And along the way, there's this little rundown shack, this old wooden shack. I don't know why my mom stops, but I go in there and there's Jim Carrey. And I'm like, what the hell? This was before I controlled my dreams. But we picked up Jim Carrey when he looked like Ace Ventura and was going into this theme park. Now, it sounds cute and fun at first, but as we pulled into this theme park, it was like something out of Zombieland. Like, it was dead. The rides were rusted, everything was rusted. It was pretty gloomy. And my friend was with us, and it was when we rode the rides and stuff, but it was so dark, but it was so meaningful. And Jim Carrey, man, he was there the whole time, and I woke up. I can't tell you what that meant, but it was kind of like a sweet and sour thing.
Oftentimes, I think when we see, especially people that are well known in the outer world, they kind of imbue like an archetype, and so then it's a matter of like, well, how do you feel about Jim Carrey in real life, and then you can strip away the mask of him. So I want to talk about with you in particular, and I had marked. I have a note here, and
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what do you think Jim Carrey represented in that dream? Was he like your spirit guide? Your familiar?
Right. Well, what did he represent to you in life?
Well, when I was growing up,
Nice.
oh,
Oh my God.
there's an earthquake over there.
I
Opa.
know.
Yeah, first
Jim
with the
Carrey.
wind chimes, the cat. Okay, go ahead.
Jim Carrey, he was sort of like my childhood hero. Him and Robin Williams. So when I was getting bullied at school and stuff, I would flip on Ace Ventura, or I would turn on Jumanji, or I would, the comedy was really my own escapism. And so even on my gloomiest of days, it's going to sound strange, but Jim Carrey was sort of like that enlightening figure that that probably prevented, some events that I didn't want to happen in my life.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty then. Carry on.
Yeah, I didn't. I'm back, by the way. So I had marked on a note with you in particular, Robert, that I because we've talked, and I know that you're a prolific dreamer and you deal with lots of lucidity. So I wanted to spend a good deal of time with how that plays out with you. Um, so,
Oh, what's
so
that again? Sorry, my internet cut out.
So I wanted to spend a good deal of time talking about lucidity and OBEs with you,
Hmm.
since that seems to be you seem to be pretty adept at that. So tell us about how your first experience with going lucid, and and maybe the dream that's tied into, and what do you think triggered your lucidity?
I think I've always naturally been good at it. Realize how advanced it was, and I remember I got my first knife. It was a Native American knife. It had a buffalo and an eagle on it, and it was pretty much one of them knives to fold. So I said, okay, this is going to be my magic knife. So I did the spell, and what happened was it was an astral projection that I wrote. I kind of read vaguely on astral projection, and me being like 18 years old, I'm like, shit, this is easy. I could do this, you know? So I did. I wrote, in my arrogance, I wrote this astral projection spell, and I did it, and I closed my eyes. I held the knife in my hand, and I actually charged this knife in the astral. And that was my very first spell. Um, so I never realized how good at it that I was back then. I mean, for most people to do astral magic, it takes probably a decade, and it starts with Kabbalistic path working or looking into tarot cards or something. But specifically with dream work, I mean, dream work took a little while. It took a lot of forms of micro evolution to actually reach that point, like 30 days of recording dreams.
So you went into it actively trying to control that state.
Yeah.
Do you? So what? So I guess tell me. So you have a dream tonight. You go to sleep. What is there? Is there a trigger for you to go lucid or OBE, then OBE, or does it just naturally happen now? How how does that work for you? Because it seems like most of the people I talk to, and including myself, we find ourselves where it's all of a sudden, like, as much as I like to just dream and go, like, close my eyes and woohoo, here I am, it never happens that way. I always have to be doing, I'm like in just normal dreaming, daily filing stuff, and then something goes strange, and it's the strangeness that allows my me to hone in on the fact that I'm not, that I'm not in my body, really, So how does that work for you? Robert, did
Okay.
we lose you?
Oh, I'm here now.
Okay.
Yeah, I understood what you're saying. So a trigger or anything. Generally, I could do it right on command. I have to just set out the intention and obsess myself over the idea and build myself up over it.
Hmm.
Or
Before
sometimes,
you're going to sleep.
hmm yeah. Or even if I want to have a prepared dream, sometimes what I'll do is I'll have things set ready a week before. For example, let's say I want to work with the spirit in a dream, which I don't recommend for newbies. It's just too open. But what I will do is, like, let's take an Olympic spirit. Let's take the Olympic spirit of Fool or Pool, Phul. What I would do is I would look at that seal, look at that sigil. I wouldn't do any evocations, but it would be my sole focus to focus on it over a week, over a week, over a week. Learn about Fool, learn about the moon, learn about the number of legions, learn about this, learn about learn about that, obsess over it. Then on the seventh day, once I actually do the work, I can visual. It's like it's there. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So I sort of preparing the mind, when you have a good structure based on a good method, I mean, you could throw any. I see, especially with dreams, your mind is like a structure,
Hmm.
and the way you think is the way you speak. You know, like your regular language, like your first or native language, and that's something I came up with because, for example, when I read Latin, the grammar is totally different. It took me about I would say 3 months before I actually got a hold of Latin and started to realize the structure. Then I started thinking thoughts in Latin. Then Latin started coming out in my dreams,
Yes. Yeah.
and so it's understanding the principle of what you're doing, and seeing this structure as a trash can. I know it's a horrible analogy, but you have this receptacle you can throw paper or anything in, and this trash can is your methods. This is how you work with stuff. And I could throw any I could throw a spirit sigil into my trash can of methods, and it goes to the bottom. And I could throw something else in there and something else in there. So when I go on a dream, I kind of see my mind as structured. And knowing somewhat of the structure of my mind, I'm able to sort of have an idea of where I want to go and how to achieve it.
So is it like I have this image as you're telling me all this? I have this and I've always had. It's not that you're sparking this image. I've always had this idea that this is possible, and I've only had the pleasure of it a couple times. But when laying down to sleep from here, right, then I wake up into another life I'm living, and it's basically like this is the dream, and and in those experiences that I've had, there's a continuity. Like I actually have a life going, and it's still like the me, the I that's inside, Nish's flesh. And is there? Do you experience any of that? Is it so? Is it just like you wake up into that life that
Yeah,
you've got going, or is there continuity? I guess.
that I had, I'll never forget about. It was actually kind of creepy, and I woke up in tears. Like, I had this dream that I lived an entire life, a totally different life. I saw some of the same people, some of the same experiences, and I saw myself to when I was like around 30, 30. I would say 35, somewhere along there. And then I remember a totally different childhood. I remember, and this is all in one dream, granted. I remember a totally different childhood, a totally different, house and everything. And so when I went through this whole process of living this whole other life in a dream, it felt real, like all the senses were there, like I'm talking to you, or like they're talking to you and Jerry, or doing something out in public. That is how clear and vivid this was. And I had all the memories. Then I woke up and it felt like I was in a totally different world. I'm like, oh shit. I said, I just lived a different life, and now I wake up and this shit is, oh wow. I think for a week I started to question reality, you know.
That's where I'm at with it all. Like, really, where is reality? Where does it actually live? That's amazing. And that was just that one time where you had experienced that. That's amazing. So on the theme of continuity, have you experienced continuity from in your dreams from different, like today, tomorrow, in our timeline here where we move forward? So you could like for example, I dream of the same house a lot, and so when I'm in it, it might change, the imagery might change, but it's always that same house. It always feels like that same house.
Mm-hmm. A part of it cut out because of my internet. What was the question fully?
Do you experience continuity in dreams?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes. There's this. I go back to a few houses I used to live in. I think two or three of them are torn down, but yeah, it's like Sometimes I'll start off from point A to point B, but sometimes I'll have recurring dreams in that regard, or sometimes I'll have separate dreams that tell a different story, and it's like the dream I may have had like 3 weeks ago now is here, and I'm back in this other world doing this other thing. So even then, even in reality, I would say the houses and all of this that I went to, I would say yeah, I've had that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I had that
Yep.
noted.
Me too.
So I want to talk about the difference between lucidity and OBEs with you. What is the difference?
Well, I think lucidities, I think they're a lot more vivid personally. Um, like I think lucidity takes you somewhere to where I would consider that soul travel pretty much. So in that regard, I would have to say that lucidity is different because I think lucidity is much deeper. But an out of body experience, like you're there, but you're still in a semi conscious state, or and you're partially in the unconscious state, along with that imagination. And I sort of follow the philosophy that the Greeks are in with this. And that philosophy is that the soul is in the mind. And I've gotten intense experiences that were probably a little more abstract out of body experiences, but lucidity was just fairly different because it just felt deeper, more surreal. The senses were more intact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense. And it's almost like an enhanced out of body experience.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's only achieved through heavily unconscious states. But I've had some really interesting experiences with lucidity and astral projection over the years. I mean, I had to take, I believe, probably a 2 year break away from astral projection,
Mm-hmm.
but because some of the experiences were seeming a little too crazy for me, and then I had to question is, how much of this can ruin my sanity? Because when you're going so much to the other side, you know, you start to interpret things differently here, and you have to stay grounded at some point.
Right, and you spend too much time there. I could totally see that happening too.
Hmm.
Have you ever been in a state of fear that you may not return to your body?
No, I haven't experienced that, but when I was a kid, and sometimes even in my dreams now, the worst feeling is when you're falling in a dream. Like you feel it in your gut, and sometimes that'll wake me up. But I never had a dream of not going back to my body. Maybe it's because I'm not afraid of death. I mean, when I was in the army, I faced a lot of experiences, and there are times I almost died on several occasions. So if I didn't go back to my body, I wouldn't be complaining. I mean, personally, I like the other side better than this hellhole of a world.
I hear that sentiment from a lot of people that actually have a rich dream life in which they're actually conscious when I say that. So that there actually is a sense of self involved in those other states of existence. When you were in the military and seeing action, live action, wherever you were, how did you dream? And I don't know how that happens when you're in the middle of kind of those intense experiences. If you dream more or less, were they vivid?
What was the middle part of that? My internet cut out again. I
Where
apologize.
so when you were in the military and deployed, how was your dream life?
Oh, it was honestly. Have you ever had such a life that was so repetitive that you had boring dreams?
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Well,
Wow.
well, let me put it this way. It's like I would wake up, I'd do my patrols, I'd come home, oh no 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 no, to my barracks or whatever. Or if I was here in the States, I'd come home. And it was so repetitive. I had this routine so engraved that I would dream about doing my daily life. Even when I did factory work a while back, standing on a line, just assembling car parts together and all of that. I did that for 12 hours a day. So that's when my dreams really sucked. I had a dream I would be at work putting car parts together because it
Yeah.
was so routine.
Yeah. I have had when I'm learning new stuff, I've had them bleed into my dreams. But yeah, I always consider that that file system of your daily life. So let's get into some of the magical stuff with you.
Hmm.
What do you think? What do you think the difference is in these states? Magically. So I had I like to get back to Plato with the idea of the soul, and you write heavily about some of this stuff. You talk a lot about it. So fill us in.
Okay, so what's the difference between magic and what?
What's the difference between these states of consciousness, in your opinion, through experience in being a dreamer?
Okay, well, the thing is, I when it comes to states of consciousness and being a dreamer, I think that it's something I think they correspond together. But magic, I see as something with a totally different definition. And we'll go into that if you'd like. But I think they correspond together, personally, at least with the way you termed it. I mean, I don't think there's no denial of, taking the will to deal with different levels of consciousness. But I wouldn't quite break down magic to a completely psychological model, and I'm firm by that.
So do you think that there is okay, what do you think? Let me go this route.
Mhm.
What do you think happens when we die?
I'm not a.
What do you think through your gut instinct and all of that?
I don't know, but if I had to put my money on it, I think there's individual forms of intelligences. I mean, or maybe in our dream world. I mean, whatever it is, it's some. I think it's some form of intelligence. Of individual ideas. Do you know what I mean?
Do you think that there's any sense of that in our dreaming selves?
Oh yeah, I think the Egyptians had it right when they said that there were different parts of the body, even the Kabbalists, like different parts of the soul and the spirit. Like you have your ba and your ka, and you have several other parts which can transcend and rise. So, and it's kind of like a system in our body. Our systems are organized by different organs, and our body runs like a well fine-tuned machine if we take care of it. If we don't, even by hereditary stuff and things like that, it'll break down. And I think the spirit or the soul or the consciousness, whatever, that there are all these parts like gears, and there are different things to make it run. And so I think the spirit or soul or whatever, the astral body, I think that there's many different parts which make us up spiritually, that once we do have our last breath of life, that we just sort of fade into the aether or the astral plane.
And so by fading into the ether or astral plane, that does that dissolve the I that you function from now, the Robert that you're talking through or as now?
Because, if we was all truly one soul, we wouldn't have any identity. We wouldn't have any individuality. I do think that there's an essence of an intelligence to divide one thing from another. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
Maybe
But
not
I'm
on a materialistic world, but maybe more in a sense of, this is the essence or the properties or virtues of this particular spirit.
Well, as someone that experiences dreams in a lucid way, where you're conscious and you're able to drive your will, how tangible is that? In that tangibility, how does that amount of control differ from the amount of control you have right now? Is it just as tangible? What's the difference
It's more
between?
tangible. It's more
So,
tangible.
so what is this experience that we're having?
Realize what's going on. You may not be able to control everything, but what you can do is you can move little things that affect the events and actually have fun with it.
So if it's more tangible, though, I think you cut out sometimes when I'm asking questions. If it's more tangible, what do you think this experience is?
I see it as one part of permeation. For how to describe it, it's like one part of permeation, and there's different emanations of permeation. So this is just one level of existence.
And so, like, sympathetically, as we were talking about earlier with like the downloading of the book and stuff like that, you can then say the magician can then affect a much greater diameter by syncing the dream world with the waking world. Do you think that? Am I getting that from you?
Yeah. I think if we actually take from our dreams sometimes to what makes sense. For example, this book, like I was working with the spirit that I put in my ring from the opening of the mouth ritual, and her name is Philosophia, which is Greek for philosophy. And she came to me in a dream. One dream she led me to Plato. The other one she led me to um, Pythagoras. And Pythagoras, he showed me this disc with the 10-pointed star, my own symbol. And I'm like, whoa, that's wild. And then I don't know how, but I understood ancient Greek. And then I woke up, and then I saw extra little symbols that he added on it on this disc. And I knew what they were from the monad to the decad based on the symbols. I'm like, I woke up, and then I hurried up. I marked that down. I put it together, and I realized I had a scrying system. I had a system leading to different worlds, and it's actually affected my magic, and I've helped a lot of people with it. The thing is, when you're downloading that information, you have to make sure you do it right, and you're not getting overly abstract. For example, the periodical tables of elements that came from a dream. I do think dreams can hold something, but we have to sort of have a filter to prevent extremism.
And when you say extremism, what do you mean?
Something, at least for me, that's too far in left field, to where your head is in the clouds, to where you get so wrapped up in an idea, there's fanaticism, and it's something you're obsessed about. It's preventing you from making friends. It's preventing you from living life. It's almost a borderline martyr.
Yes, I get that. So in all of this, another state that I sync with all of this stuff that's kind of intangible is deja vu. Do you experience deja vu?
I was at Holiday World. That's at Santa Claus, Indiana, by the way, Jerry.
Excellent, excellent. I love Santa Claus, Indiana. It's my favorite place in the world.
Yeah, yeah. So you've heard of Holiday World, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but that I was right by this ride that they have there called the Banshee, and I was just sitting there, and it's like I've been through this before. I can't explain it, and it's kind of like that feeling that you get in your mind, and then you say, "Oh wait, my mom's going to say this. Oh yeah, this is going to happen too." And then even before my mom started the first sentence, I recited her sentence. Then I recited everything that was going to happen, and my mom was legitimately freaked out.
That's pretty great. Did you, so when you experienced deja vu, and I'm sorry if I ask things that you've already answered, but you're breaking up a lot, so I've been
Oh, sorry.
struggling, really struggling trying to follow you. So if I'm sounding redundant or repetitive, I don't know. So have you been able to pin where you had the deja vu, like where it started?
I can generally remember. Um, like, are you talking about a location?
Yeah, like our time, like so since it's that sense of a rerun, right? And so part of it is recalling what and kind of tapping into what the rerun is, like what, so you can recite what's going to happen, but then understanding or pinpointing where you had it before. Was it a dream? Like how did you?
I don't know, honestly. All I know is I've gone through something, and I can't tell you where. This led me to a really scary theory,
Ooh,
and
do
a,
tell.
and a thought crossed my mind, right? And it's a horrific thought, and that is, what if today, what if we are doomed to repeat what we lived, what we did in a prior life, over and over and over?
Well,
Like Groundhog's Day without an
Yeah,
yeah.
escape, without an
yeah,
escape.
just but with one life, over and over and over, same decisions.
There was a movie that came out recently called The Discovery on Netflix that kind of explores that possibility.
It scared me because I think that sometimes it crosses my mind that that could be real. I mean, um, like it may sometimes it makes me question free will.
Yes, there's a lot for me that like everything I've definitely at a point in my life where everything I've thought I knew at one point is kind of dissolving. And so now I'm just in complete student mode again. And this in reality has fallen into that into that sector. I'm listening to a lot of stuff. I mean, there are people who have suggested that we all died. We had a mass death at 2012 or something. And
And 2003 and
yeah,
1997 and 19...
but the reverberations of that. So if just intellectually chewing on it is fodder and not necessarily tying it to anyone's stuff, putting it through your own mill. If nothing else, it's good fiction to write about or think about. Reverberations through time, and deja vu somehow sinks us in some sort of loop.
It could be. I mean, I'm going to be honest and sincere and in saying that I don't know. I don't try to trivialize things because then you fall down one rabbit hole out of the other, then the next, and the next, and the next, and it's so time consuming. And we only live this life once, and I have to keep the degree of practical thought to retain some sanity because with all my project and all my magical ideas I have and all my and everything, I guess I just don't want to get caught up in something that I can't get out of, or something just is purely speculative and I could be wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good to remain grounded, and that's what I'm hearing you say anyway. So, and then with the side of structure, I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff that happens, and no one has the market on it, and that's what I'm talking about with dreams and deja vu, and even memory. Memory is in that realm too. It's intangible. It's we can't touch it, we can't relive it. You can't even really prove that it happened, except for maybe there's this idea of photographs and film and stuff, but still there's a detachment that happens. Just my pondering on that. So these things kind of all fall into that realm.
I mean, honestly, the best theory that I've ever heard on the topic comes from both Plato and Pythagoras. I mean, and because they really go deep into this, how thought is formed. So you have the monad, which is, just one thought. Then you have the world soul, which is, individual, where things start to, the ideas from one thought really start to take form and have their individuality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was hoping you would expand on that a little.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, pretty much this goes back to the monad, dyad, and triad, and I'm sure Jerry is well aware of this theory.
Yes,
As am I,
yeah.
but I think it's good fodder.
Yeah, well, the monad is sort of this one thought, the original being, the one thing, and it's sort of like the emanation of light. It's the Keter in Kabbalah. It's the monad to the Greeks. It's the first world of creation and Renaissance magic. But then this one thought alone has the ability to expand, but for this one thing to expand, it needs duality. So we have the dyad. This is where we start to get individualism. This is where we start to get opposites. This is where we start to get different parts of the personality. And however, this is seen in a way as a positive and a negative, because when you have so many different kinds of personalities, you have not only harmony, but mainly a lot of disagreements, and it gets away from the source. So what happens is duality manifests into the triad. And the triad, we can say, is the Adam Kadmon, and the Adam Kadmon is pretty much kabbalistically is the divine man. It's that unity with the one, and this is why we have the tetractys, which is like a triangle, but there's 10 dots in there like bowling pins.
Yeah.
So it's the three, the
Three
triangle.
are one though.
Yeah, so you have the 3, then you have the 10, which and 10 is complete manifestation, but it's also a doorway to the monad. So the most powerful numbers, I think, in Pythagoreanism are 1, 3, and 10 for this reason, because 1 is the beginning, 3 is the unification, and 10 is like a gateway. It's a doorway to God. You know what I mean? It's a doorway. It's a doorway to the beginning. 10 is the first 2-digit number. It's very special. So
yeah, I agree, and it also I find like the 301 is classic, and also this is the basis of the axiom of Mariah, and it just builds.
Yeah, well,
So,
even
do
the
you
idea
think
of the 101 too.
the 101?
Yeah, being significant, the gateway. It's like the 2 pillars symbology in the 101. It's also the initiation and torture,
Yes.
like all that stuff too.
It's juicy. Very. So I guess that we've been here an hour. It's amazing that anything that could go wrong in the show went wrong on my end. It's just amazing. So I wanted to, in the end, I want to close before we do our post show with you. Is this reality and the structure of it that is kind of democratically held down.
Mm-hmm.
Could you see this as a dream?
Well, with one experience that I had, living a full life and then just going to sleep and waking up, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I wouldn't put it past the theory. When you
I mean,
go
I'm
through
just trying to understand what makes this so tangible. Why does this, we put so much stock into it and energy into our agreed presumption of what we're experiencing, our agreed ideas of how everything is, and yet it really could just be a dream.
Well, we got to function in this world. That's why.
You got to function in a dream too.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about like you have to eat food, you have to do other things, and we got to sustain ourselves. I mean, this is where I think where we try to trivialize things too much, because we have to understand things in order to progress. If somebody has cancer, we need science to progress. If we need to build a house, we don't want a newbie engineer who just simply has a theory. We want somebody who somewhat understands the structure. You know what I mean? And for all practical reasons, I think that's why.
Okay, that's good. I have nothing to add to that. That's good. I mean, that's what I expected for sure. Because I don't know. Yes, we have to eat. I experienced in dreams, in some of my more intense dreams, things have to happen. Like I have to go through doorways to get from one room to another. There's no way I can't pop in and out. And so I've experienced more rigid dreams where they're like labyrinths, really, which is kind of how I'm viewing life at this time. I have to nourish my body or, it gets sick. I have to, make money to pay bills or all these boundaries that we find ourselves surrounded by to get by.
Oh, I agree.
So I don't know, when I've experienced that in the dream experience, it's got me questioning this experience. Is all I'm saying.
See, I question it daily and don't have any of those weird ass experiences. So
I know. Well, Jerry, this is what makes you extra
crazy. Thank you. All right.
No, but we're functioning. As long as we're functioning.
Yeah, I would argue about that too. But anyway, Raksha's got a question here. Mm-hmm. Hello, Raksha. Welcome. Have you ever had a sex dream that was far more than a dream, too real to just be a dream?
Oh, yeah, actually.
Please tell us all about it.
We want some of this juice.
I really want Jerry to narrate this. I'm going to write this down and have him narrate.
Write it down, and I will definitely narrate it. She removed her bra slowly.
Actually, yeah, that's a really good question. I actually had a full-on dream to where I had full-blown sex with Athena, the Greek goddess.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Back in 2011. Like, it was, like, too good to be real. But, yeah.
That was it? That's the whole dream?
That was super
no
lame.
Juicy juice?
Super lame. I'm not reading that.
But it was in a temple, though. That's the thing.
Well, no, it's excellent that you had sex with a goddess in a temple.
It was very sensual. Very sensual.
Yeah. Did it end up being an actual wet dream?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Nice.
Were you a virgin at the time?
No.
Interesting. Was she on top? Was she the top?
Yeah, she was on top.
I don't think that was the question.
Oh yeah, she was.
I love Moose.
Yeah, it was very vivid. I don't know. It was I don't know. There was pillars there and everything, and it was right like on this nice bed. It had silk all around it. It was nice.
Did the Greeks have silk? I suppose they did.
Yeah, I think they did.
Okay, Reamsy's got the next question. Could you please describe the nipple rubbing part?
Well, yeah. They were hard. They were firm. You squeeze them a little bit, milk came out. It was an amazing experience.
Oh wow, you were getting milk from the goddess.
Yeah.
That's really significant.
I'm
I
not
love
reading
you.
that, Rock. All right. Well, that's
So
it for
is that
questions.
all the questions? Did we even ask?
I did.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I'm not in the chat. Too much stuff was happening for me to even go there.
You think?
Damn cats.
And
It was
grandfather
everything. The
clock
wind
and
blew
wind
over. A window broke. The wind blew over and broke a window. I mean, it's been like that tonight.
Did your
It
mic
sounds
drop
like an
too?
H.P. Lovecraft
My
story.
mic dropped. I mean, really, Robert, what kind of juju
Robert,
do
do you
you
see the
have?
shirt I'm wearing?
No, I may have. Oh, it's you. You summoned
Yes,
H.P.
Lovecraft.
Lovecraft to this.
I bring H.P. Lovecraft to this.
really can't believe the crazy stuff that happened in this, Robert. It's some juju of yours, I think.
Yeah, I blame H.P. Lovecraft on his shirt. It's okay.
I got broken glass out of this experience.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It could all be a dream. You don't know.
I don't know, it's getting my nipples hard. So that's a good note to end this. Thank you all for watching or listening, or however you're consuming this media. Next week, our guest will be Laura London, who is the who runs the podcast, is the voice of whatever. Her podcast is called Speaking of Young, and she interviews psychiatrists, psychologists, other radio personalities about Carl Jung. She's a very interesting woman, and we can't wait to talk to her. So have a great night, everybody.
Excited.
Thank you, Robert, so much for joining us.
Oh, that's the cat.
Perfect way to end it.
Thank you, Robert.
It's our new theme song.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
My cat.